5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, you may begin anytime you
I'm
wish.
Martin King. Everybody calls me Red. My wife is Dixie. Years and years ago, it seems like, my wife and I and a daughter moved to Cushing, Texas. I began working the bank there. Within 2 or 3 days, a man came in, a young man like, and we had a very short conversation. To make a long story short, if I ever had an inseparable friend, it was Ralph Blackstone. That's your granddaddy on one side. We uh, we became friends very fast. It seemed that we had a number of things in common, and before a month had gone by, our 10-year-old daughter was playing in their yard with these little bitsy Blackstones. Four of them. One of them was named Rennie. He had straight burr hair and a space between his upper teeth, and I thought, my gracious, what in the world can that thing turn out to be? Nevertheless, we became fast friends. And one Sunday afternoon, I recall, we got in the Plymouth station wagon, and we started out on a little Sunday afternoon excursion. Ralph had to stop downtown in the big city of Cushing for something, and I heard a commotion, and there were two of the Blackstone girls stretched out on a quilt in the back, behind the back seat of the station wagon. And I looked around there, and Karen was choking, I thought, to death. Didn't know why, but I reached over there. I saw she was turning a different color in the face, gasping for breath and grabbing at her throat. She was just a baby. She was about 3 years old, perhaps. And I grabbed her up, and I shook her by the feet, and I slapped her on the back, and she coughed up this nickel. She had swallowed this nickel, and her mother had just got through telling her they were laying down and had this money in the back, and I had mentioned it, that they had this money in their mouth. And their mother from the front seat told them to get that out, so, but it didn't happen. I had to retrieve the nickel. Of course, needless to say, my lap became the most comfortable place for Karen to recline from then on, you know? But we had great times. We met in May of '52. By '55, my wife and I had decided we wanted to build us a house. And we bought a lot and began to gather some materials and so forth. And Ralph was a handyman at most anything. He says, I tell you what I'll do, he says, you get the wire and I'll wire your house for you. He was an electrician, he was a plumber, he was a pianist, he was a postman, he was just everything, and a half doctor. He was half doctor, really was. And anyway, we said, okay. Well, I had the sheetrock up, and the house was nearly finished, and we were putting the finishing touches, and the sheetrock men were there floating out this stuff, and the painter was there in the other part of the house, and Ralph was up in the attic trying to wire me up a three-way switch. So we'd go in the back door, come through the kitchen, come through the den, go into the bedroom area, and turn off the light behind us. Oh, that was a date. This was 1952. He says, you've got to have a three-way switch. I don't know how long he was up there, but soon I walked through, and there was Ralph's leg stuck down through the ceiling in the den, the most expensive room we had, and I could see all the way. He straddled the ceiling joist. Well, he came down. He says, I just don't know. He was just beside himself. And, of course, the sheetrock man helped him more than anything. He said, don't worry about that. He says, I can fix that this afternoon. You'll never know it. But sure enough, his leg just he fell through, slipped off of the rack, off of the ceiling joist. Well, that was funny, but it wasn't funny. And there were no injuries, you know. But we talked about that many times during his lifetime. One day, our lot was pretty big, and our grass got pretty high, and I had a push reel type mower. That before a motor was on them, but then these reel type mowers, and then I got an opportunity to buy a riding lawn mower. Rennie was about 4 years old then. Space in his two front teeth was even wider. His eyes were bigger. He wanted to ride this riding lawnmower. So he got over to the house there some way. I forgot how he got over there, but what I do remember is that he had to watch the pedal that he put his foot on to make it run. So I'd have to run and jump on the lawnmower to keep him running to the house. You know, he just like it and watch his foot get past me. Well, there suddenly appeared in the driveway his mother in the car. We must go home. He did not want to go home. He began to pout and sob as he really could. He did not get in the car. He got out in the street and started walking home. Now, it's 5 or 6 blocks home, across the railroad track. He was finally picked up, put in the car. I know he didn't like that, but you could tell he didn't like it. He had started out walking. Not long after that, all the while, one of the strangest manufacturing operations was going on in our front yard that I had ever seen. I couldn't figure out why anybody would want to buy boots for their dogs. You know, a dog would get a grass burn in his foot. He just throw it over there and take his teeth and bite it, pull it out. But Ralph had a dog boot manufacturing place right there in my front yard. He had rented this Dr. Carrickers, who had been dead 10 or 15 years, rented this little 10 by 14 office building there in our front yard from our landlady, and he had moved his dog manufacturing machines and dyes that he cut with and all that sort of thing. He made these dog boots and sold them to bird hunters all over Texas, and I guess other states if they found out about it. But he spent a few hours down there manufacturing these dog boots for these dogs to wear so they could hunt birds in the grass bird country for their owners. I thought that was the strangest thing. In fact, I thought it was just about as useful as a hog with a side saddle. And we had some of those, believe it or not. Ralph decided he wanted to buy a farm. I don't know how much conversation he and Dee had about it. I don't think that they were all in 100% agreement. But anyway, he bought this farm, had a pond on it. He said, now we'll have some fun. We'll catch all the fish we want. I'm told that there are fish in there. Well, there might have been, but as it turned out, the frogs are what's multiplied. Well, we had to have a way to gig and get to the frogs. Well, we couldn't gig them from upstairs because it's down the dam and in the hole and so forth. So I built a boat. I built a boat so that we could go frog gigging in Ralph's pond. Put it together with brass screws. In fact, I've got about a half a pint of those brass screws still left. Now, this was in 1953 that I did this. This was before we built the house. Built it out there in Maud Carricker's old garage. You know. Anyway, we went frog gigging several nights in that boat, and we'd shine a light on these bank, and we'd see these frog eyes, and we'd skip up there and to it, and Ralph would gig one, and then he'd use the paddle, and I'd use the light, and then I'd gig one. I don't recall that we ever had an abundance of frog legs, but we did this and had a lot of fun and a lot of fellowship. A lot of good times. Anyway, time went on, and I used up some of those brass screws and something else, but as some of you listening to this might recall, Ralph and I had one thing in common. I liked to sing, and he liked to play the piano, and he loved music, and so did I. I was not accomplished at it in any way, just had a little talent, I was told. Anyway, we entertained at the drop of a hat, just about any school or any place, any gathering. We played, and I sang at a number of funerals of family members and family friends. Ralph had a fake book. You older ones will know what that fake book is. It was thick, about 1.25 inches thick, and just had the short runs of words and notes and a lot of chords in it, and Ralph used that, and I would try to learn. I'd try to learn the lyrics. One night, we were singing at a high school reunion. They had their Cushing high school senior class reunion on Christmas time, and I had written down the words to one of these songs that we were going to use. Of course, our all-time favorite was "Any Time," as the name of this song, and he liked it, and then I learned to like it. Anyway, we were singing and playing, and it was in the wintertime, and it was lightning and raining, and the lights went out. And I was right in the middle of this lyric that I had just memorized a part of and couldn't have it all. And one of the men sitting close, he was a man by now, he's sitting close, and he noticed that I was looking at my little notes here now and then, and the lights went out, the music stopped, he jumped up and flicked on his cigarette lighter. Didn't have Bics in those days, had these old Zippos. You had to fan them dang things like that and finally get them started, and then there it would be. It'd be like a Bunsen burner, highway smudge pot. But anyway, we had plenty of light to finish that song. And I don't know if they liked the song very well, but they were amused at all of the antics that went on. Another time, we had a big deal annually put on by the Lions Club. And we were short of money from the cakewalk and the bingo and the all-night, half-night affair, because we had had a murder in town that afternoon that was discovered just about the time the parade was to start at 5 o'clock. Well, this put a damper on the crowd that gathered, and it put a damper on their attitude toward frivolity and having a good time and spending money. So we did not have a very successful Lions Club carnival. Somebody gave birth to the idea that we would have a womanless wedding, and the Lions Club would be all the characters, and we secured the services or the use of the high school auditorium, and we put this on. I sang "I Love You Truly" in a falsetto, and Ralph played. And then at another place, another program just following that, Ralph and I did a duet. Now, you children listen to this, you grandchildren listen to this, won't pick up on this very well, but we sang this song. It was, title of which was, "I Get a Kick Out the Chicks That I Picks 'Cause They're Slender, Tender, and Tall." Supposed to be a blackface deal. And we did have this blackface minstrel. That was a roar. That was a roar. I get a kick out the chicks that I picks 'cause they're slender, tender, and tall. Another one was "Move It Over." Let's see, what was that? I'll have to try to pick up on that one later. But anyway, suffice it to say, since I've moved to Cushing, from Cushing, and I now live in Wills Point, I lost my inseparable friend, but I found another one. But I still tell him, I still make this explanation. If I ever had an inseparable friend, it was Ralph Blackstone. It's a sad thing that we can't, it's a good thing that we have such memories to cherish, but it's a sad thing that all the players can't be present as long as we desire. Because it would get to, I suppose life would get to, in a real rut if we didn't have some things sometimes that disappointed us. You know, these are mysterious things, but nevertheless we look back over the days and the years and all of these memories. We cherish. They mean a lot to us. I don't know. I'm sure that there are other things that happen, but at my age, I don't have total recall. There's a corny saying going on, and I have to repeat it because I rely on it. Of the two that were discussing the hereafter, she said, well, she thought of the hereafter all the time. She said, every time I go in the bathroom or to the kitchen, I say to myself, what am I hereafter? So if I had total recall, I could probably add some more to this this tape, and you children, or to whoever is listening, could laugh about some of these things. But those are the points, high points that stick in my mind by my memories of Ralph Blackstone.
I'm going to say who this is.
The service station that was on the corner. The little slender fellow that owned that, and his wife was, she baked cakes for weddings all the time.
Now, which corner are we talking about?
Across from Maud's where we lived.
Okay.
The little street that went by the side of the house.
Okay.
And
Right.
Alton lived over here. The service station was on the corner. Then there was the Williamson house, Alton Strickland, and then the old lady that was down there in the drugstore, Ms. Long. And, and her son.
Okay, that's Annie Lou and Bill then lived there
Yes.
at that point.
I think after she died, they lived there.
Now, see, I had forgotten. So what you're saying is the street that goes, well, where we're in here.
By the side
Okay.
of it.
So we're talking about Miss Maud was on this side. Landmark Baptist was over here. Was across the street, directly across the street from Miss Maud's, right?
No.
At the present time,
At the
across
present
the
time.
street from that location.
Yes, at the present
At the
time.
present
But
time.
before it was on the other street across.
Yeah, okay.
Across
Mhm.
from the Watts.
What was the man's name that ran the service station?
John Edmund.
Yes.
That's right. Okay, see, John. So it's coming down that street, then it would have been Miss Maud's, and then the filling station. You said.
Coming down what street?
Okay, if we're going downtown.
Okay.
Okay, Main Street. We're headed for Moss Coonshaw's.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to make a left onto the street. Miss Maud would have been on the right. Alton would have been on the left.
Yes.
Now, where is the filling station?
It was right by
Right.
Alton Strickland, where the bank is now.
Okay, where the bank is now. That was the filling station, and then.
And then Alton Strickland.
Okay, and
Then
then.
Mr. Williamson.
Okay, and then the
Then
Longs.
Ms. Long.
Okay.
And that's where they discovered the murdered body that I told you about on the Lions Club day.
What was that?
Mrs. Long's son, Jake, murdered the Vardaman girl. And they brought, and he drove down in front of their house, and he went in his mother's house and tried to take his own life.
Now, Vardaman.
T.R. Vardaman.
T.R. Vardaman,
was
the
a
contractor,
highway.
contractor at Nacogdoches.
This was his sister, and she dated Jake
Long.
Long.
I had forgotten all about
Well, that happened. That's the reason our Lions Club deal that I spoke of. That thing's still on?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I've already told that.
Yeah. No, that's fine. I mean, this is exactly what I want. Is
Okay.
we're trying to piece things together. Put things back together, of how they were. Because I had forgotten. Now, when about what year was that?
Well, now that I believe I've already told you about this. What am I here after? Bit of my mind is gone. I don't remember.
If you're talking about this murder,
Mhm.
see,
We
this
had already moved into our new house,
yes, so it was about 55.
55 or 56.
Okay. So you came when we were talking about Cushing, because we came in '52.
You came in April of 52.
Okay, and you
We came in May of 52.
Okay. Now, when did you leave?
I left in February of 60.
Mhm.
And Dixie and Helen did not leave until the school
School
term
was
was out.
out.
and they
That's
came.
right.
Yeah.
That's right, because they were still there.
Yeah.
I had forgotten all about that. That didn't.
Well, that's why I try to say we didn't have a good
Well-
Lions Club carnival. It
Yeah.
kind of put a different atmosphere on it. One of the Hardy Boys, the parade had formed. One of the Hardy Boys, as they walked by, looked at that side of the car, and blood was dripping out onto the pavement, onto the asphalt pavement. And brought that to somebody's attention, and they went back and discovered, and there was the Vardaman woman's body. And it was Jake Long's car.
Who was the woman that worked at the gas, the automatic gas?
Verna Heath.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
She lived next door to us. The Jake and the Varnum woman had parked in her driveway, which was right next to our kitchen. And they were both heavy drinkers. I saw them there and wondered why they were there. When I'd pass the kitchen window once in a while, I'd look and they were still there. Then they disappeared, and then later that day, I was told what happened. So everybody really thought that he killed her while they were out there in that drive.
One thing that I recall now that Dixie's mentioned our two driveways, the Heath driveway and my driveway. On this farm, this big farm that Ralph bought, there were lots of pine seedlings. He put out pine seedlings. And I went out there, he went with me, and we went out to his place and we dug up 6 pine seedlings. And put them out, and they just began to grow. And Moss Crenshaw had given me 2, and the 2 that he gave me were about the size of a pencil. I put them out in the front yard. That was first. That was before the Blackstone pine. Well, one of those pines in the front yard died, and it's known, and the one that lived is known as the Crenshaw pine. Now it's known as the Crenshaw pine, and then the Blackstone pines are in the back there. You know. That's where Rennie broke in my lawnmower back there at the back.
Yeah, because you had a driveway that you had to come up the hill to come up to the top,
Yeah.
top of your driveway. Yeah.
In addition to the memories that I'm holding of all of this, one material thing has survived all of this, and it's a Sears Roebuck guitar that somebody gave Rennie, Dr. Rennie, and it was passed on to me. Of course, I had to remove the bridge that he had glued on upside down. I had to remove the bridge and put it on properly so that it would hold, so the strings could be put on. And you could string it up, tune it up. But it's still in operation. Rennie, if you're listening.
Oh, that's exactly what we want, because
Okay.
it's, you forget all these things and you go back and you try to, and Mother doesn't remember. Now, see, in talking, oh yeah, I remember that. Oh yeah, if you get the
Yes.
right thing, but we're too young to remember the right button to push. So
True.
that's why I wanted to talk to you, because I mean, and this is not staying for all time. This will be transcribed. This is not something that you have to worry about whether or not your voice is going to sound the right way or not, because we all sound as we sound. So. Yeah.
I can't remember it.
I bought my wife a beautiful fur coat. Something about it got wet. And mink don't stink
Mink
like
don't
that.
sting like that. Move over, Rover, and you cats are coming in, or
That's
something
right.
like that. Yeah.
Open up the doghouse.
Open
Two
up
cats.
the dog. That's what it is.
That's right.
Yeah, you remember.
Yeah.
Open up the doghouse. You cats are coming
Probably
in.
hadn't been listening to it
Well, I'm sure you did.
often.
Rover, move it over. 2 cats are coming in.
There you go.
That's it. No, that's.
Yeah.
I remember that one very well, as a matter of fact. But now,
Must be cats, cause mink don't stink like that.
That's
That was one of the lines.
isn't that weird though? Because you talked about, we were talking about Moss Crenshaw's house too, coming down that street, because it was up on the top. Was that the old Carricker house up on the
Yes.
top of the hill?
Yeah.
And then Cloy Gage's,
Gage.
Yes.
and then Moss Crenshaw's,
Crenshaw.
and then who did you say was the next person coming down the highway?
The Lloyds.
Lloyd.
Or James Dawson's parents.
No, the Lloyds first, and then
Then the
the Dawsons, and then
The
Mrs.
Pierce.
Pierce.
Yes.
Gosh, see, because we couldn't figure out all of that, and some of that now has changed
Oh, yeah.
slightly
Yeah.
too. And it's going back the other way. There were a lot of those places that are either are not there, or they've been cleared
I
off.
don't know
or,
whether Mrs. Pierce's, whether her house is still on that lot or not. I suppose it
Unless
is
they
not.
torn it down, it is.
Do you remember? Because we ran into Poochie Richards in the doctor's office
Yeah.
the other day, and she said that she and her husband had moved back to Cushing. And they were living in her mother's house.
Well, that's the Lloyd house.
okay.
Her mother and father were the Lloyd, and she had a brother. And
No, I think you're wrong.
I'm not wrong.
They did have a daughter, but was not the
Oh,
one
you said
that-
Poochie Richards.
Poochie
Yeah.
Richards.
Oh, Poochie Richards. No, no, that's different.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Lloyd
Yeah,
had red hair
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
who was she married to? I
a
forgot.
Woods. She was married to a Wood.
That's
true.
right.
That's
That
the
sounds
Lloyd.
right.
Poochie.
Yeah.
I mean, okay. No, I don't know where Poochie and her husband live. I don't know.
I don't know her maiden name.
Yeah, because she said just to us as if we would know.
Yeah.
You know, and I looked at Mother and I said, you know, who is that? Because Poochie
Poochie
and
Richard.
Milburn were brother and sister, right?
No.
No, Poochie's husband was
Husband.
Milburn's.
Son.
Milburn's son.
Son.
Yeah.
Ah.
Poochie Richard. Poochie's husband was Bully.
Called him Bully. I don't
Bully,
know.
the oldest,
I
and
don't
he
know.
and they may be living in the Richards home. That may be what there is.
But her name is not
No, her-
it's
she
Richards.
her
she was a
home that
penny.
she said. You said she said her name was Mildred. I never knew
Uh-huh.
anything but
Was
Poochie.
it
I
Penny?
thought.
That
Poochie a
sounds.
penny.
That sounds right. That
Yeah.
sounds right.
Now, one of Milburn's daughters, the one that played the piano, married a penny boy out there.
I think they live in Dallas though.
But the Lloyd girl married a Wood from Henderson. And when we lived in Cushing, they even went to Alaska to do some work.
That's right. Alaska. I remember that. Because they used to come back, and they
Yeah.
were always
And
in
when-
Alaska.
When she and let's see the brother that married James Dawson's sister.
Mm-hmm.
Kiefer
See,
Richards.
Yes,
Mhm.
Kiefer and Ann.
Mm-hmm.
And then Bully and Poochie all lived in Port Arthur. And I think Ann and Poochie both taught, and I don't know what their husbands did.
Yeah, because Poochie has remarried, because that's not her name. That's what threw us. Her name was not Richards.
Well, she married Bully Richards.
Yeah. When we saw her in the doctor's office, her name was Grimes or something like that. It was not, because they didn't call her Richards when she got up, and I'd never had her. We sat in the doctor's office the longest time, and when they said
Didn't
something to
realize it.
Miss Blackstone, then she realized who Mother was.
Mhm.
But she's been gone since I was in like the second grade. You know, and she knew Jean. She would run into Jean in Port Neches.
Well, I know Kiefer broke out with something and went to the dermatologist. The doctor said it's either your job, what you're doing, or stress. And he wanted to go back to Cushing, and Ann said, if we go back to Cushing, I'll break out. So, you might as well break out.
Break out now.
So they stayed.
And that's an interesting concept.
Two little boys that grew up at about the same time, during the same time with Rennie. They were not friends that much, but they grew up and they were in our church. There was the Dawson boys, Jed and Jim Dawson.
Yes.
Jed loved food. In fact, he loved oatmeal better than anything. He asked his neighbor one day what he's doing in the garden today. They said, I'm planting peas and planting beans, planting corn in the garden. Jed said, would you plant some oatmeal? I like oatmeal.
This is James and Edith's
Oh, I know.
son.
See, Jimmy is my age.
Yeah.
Jimmy and Jed used to live
Yeah.
next door to us.
Yeah.
And they ate raw dough. That was the thing that used to just
Probably.
their mother would make pies and they would eat raw dough. As they,
Probably.
Eat the dough.
they thought it was great, and I thought it was the worst thing I'd ever eaten in my
I
life.
mean,
Raw
several
dough.
spoons of raw cake dough myself.
Well, now that's different.
Oh, it is?
We're talking raw pie dough. We're not talking you know cake mixings or brownie
Yes.
mixings. No, we're talking raw pie dough.
Remember that.
Well, you weren't their age. That's why you don't
one,
remember
one
that.
of them lives in Dallas now, and he's what?
Jed does.
An insurance.
I don't know. Jimmy lives in Cushing.
Yeah.
Oh, he does.
He lives in Cushing. He married a girl in the dorm, and I don't know what he does. I think he works for the forestry service or something. He was a forestry
Yeah.
student.
First, and she
She's a teacher. Because we went out to Cushing and sort of drove around, and James was out in the yard working. We waved at him. We went by and left a message for Rita. She wasn't home, but sort of drove around and looked at the old streets and, you know, who lived here and who lived there.
Now, wasn't that street named Eucalyptus that
Mhm.
James Dawson and them lived on?
Because we lived on the corner of Eucalyptus and Fifth.
Yeah, right.
Well, not the corner, but
What?
down.
Yeah.
We lived at 304 Fifth Street. I always thought that was very interesting. We were P.O. Box 323, but it was 304 Fifth Street that we lived on, as if there were, streets in Cushing.
I didn't know for a long time. They were saying.
Just after we built this new house I was talking about, my driveway kept washing away with the rain. And just big ruts in it, so I decided I was going to have to do something about that. So there's a fella out there, his name was Odell Nichols. He had an old tractor, and it had a bucket and blade on it, and it was wired together with all, chains had held part of it together. He had bought an old Caterpillar, small Caterpillar somewhere. And Mr. Watt had a lot up on the lake up there, where they built the new TP&L power station. And the bank was too steep between Mr. Watt's camp house and the water. So Odell said, well, I'll loan you this Caterpillar tractor vehicle with a bucket on it, and you can you can trim it down and have that sand hauled someplace else. Well, he said he couldn't operate that, so I made a deal. I operated the front end loader, as we call them today, but a little Caterpillar thing with a bucket on the front, and hauled this sand and stuff into my driveway there out on the highway and smoothed it out to put a blacktop finish on it to keep it all washing away. In the meantime, Ralph went over and was playing tennis one afternoon with somebody, I don't remember who it was, and had a bad heart attack. And Ralph's yard was right in the progress of shaping up and leveling up and squaring up the backyard. So I took this, not the Caterpillar, but the tractor that I'd borrowed, and had a blade on it, and went over there, and it was hot, summer, hot weather, and Ralph had come home from the hospital, and he was laying up in the bed, and I was out there on the back, leveling up, shaping up the backyard and so forth. And there was a kind of an embankment. He had dug down to make
A terrace.
It was a terrace deal. Yeah. And I remember that well. He had put up a basketball goal. I don't know who he put it up for, because Rennie was just just
Put it up for the girls. We
couldn't
played basketball.
couldn't have hit the backboard, Well, I don't know. Rennie was about 8 years old by that time. By the time I'm talking, yeah, I think he's big enough to carry a trombone. Didn't Rennie take up trombone in high school over there?
Yeah.
So he was big enough at that time to carry a trombone.
Now, we used to play basketball because Gene played basketball.
Yeah, okay.
He let,
Well, the two older ones, that's right. But
yeah, Gene got to play basketball, and then they decided that damaged her hands for piano playing, and the rest of us didn't get a chance.
So
That was the end of that.
That ended that.
Ended that totally. Well, that's
I
our
suppose
perspective.
if we, sat long enough, we might recall some other incidences, share some other experiences, but that's, that's
Well, I want Aunt Dixie to tell about Miss Fussell. Not Fussell, what's that? Fussell. Miss Fussell.
Oh, the Jim crash?
Yes, I want you to tell about Miss Fussell, because I remember seeing Miss Fussell drive around town with her hat on. She always had her
Oh,
hat on
yeah.
her head, driving her car.
And if you could have seen her, she'd have on an apron that she drove. And once in a while, she would spit. And once in a while, it ended up on the steering wheel.
if she was looking to the left and spit, it went out the window. But if she was just looking straight ahead and spit, it just went all over the dashboard, and that, it didn't matter. Yeah.
When she left Cushing, though, she had on fur, and alligator shoes and bag and all this, and really looked, had her hair. But if you saw her in Cushing, you'd think. And every time they had any kind of contest, and she won, of course. Needed it less than anybody in town.
Well, see, I had forgotten that they owned, you said the Chevrolet dealership.
Mhm.
See,
Yeah.
which I had forgotten about that completely. Because I remember Bugs Johnson.
Bug
Bug
Johnson.
Johnson.
That he had that. Yeah,
He,
the bug.
he ran it, and he owned 10% of it. Mr. Watt owned 10% of it, and Mr. Fussell owned the rest.
Because you were saying she always got a new car every year because,
Oh,
because
yes.
they owned the dealership.
And when we had the baby that was stillborn, she had a right new car. She had just had it about 2 days. So she sent Red over to, when I got ready to come home, to
The hospital, from the hospital, yeah, to bring her home. Yeah.
and she would well, you tell that Will Hollis, black man that was their cook, and he would go on the deer hunts with that group of men that Mr. Fussell would go along. And he would fry the fish, and everybody thought it was the best they had ever eaten, and he would not give his recipe to anybody. So one day he came in the bank, and so you can tell what he said, Red.
You think they'd enjoy this?
Well,
Why not?
we're
Well,
just discussing the cushion.
There were 3 of us that worked in the bank. Everybody couldn't go to lunch at the same time, so the lady and the manager went at 12 o'clock, and I had to stay. About 12:30 one day, this black man, known as Will Hollis, who was the servant up at the Fussell house, did all their cooking, house cleaning, did everything except drive their car. Well, he drives his car a whole lot of the time because Mr. Fussell needed a little help once in a while. This black man walked in and he said, "How you doing?" I said, "I'm fine, Will. What can I do for you?" He said, "You know, you've been talking to me about wanting to know, and I ain't never told nobody this. Said you want to know what made my fish good." He said, I think I'm gonna tell you. He said, "Ain't nobody in here, is there?" And I said, "You can look, see that I was the only one in there. Ain't nobody in here, is there?" I said, "No." And he said, "Let me tell you something." He said, "When I get ready to cook this fish and I get it clean and everything," and said, "I salt and pepper it a little bit." Said, I breaks 2 eggs, and I stirs up and I puts a little milk in there. And he said, I puts a little more salt and pepper, and I whips it real good. And he said, I dips this fish in there. I put it over in the meal. And he said, I got the skillet going and the grease is just barely smoking. And I start dropping that fish in there. And I do that and roll it in this milk and eggs, and I put it in this meal and cracker crumb, puts it in there. And he said, when it gets just the right color of yellow, when it just begins to, he said, I forks it out of there and I sticks it right back in that same reparation. I rolls it again, and I put it in and said, when it floats and come out brown, said, it's good. I said, well, I know it's good. And you haven't told anybody else? No, sir. No, sir, I ain't told nobody else about that. But I liked you, and I'm going to tell you. He says, I'll tell you what I want you to do some of this time. He said, I sure would like, I said, I hear as you do a lot of, that you know the Bible pretty well, and you do a lot of teaching and so forth. He said, I want you to come out to my church some Sunday evening and talk to my group. Said, I'm proud of that group. Said, I teach them. Said, I'll tell you what. He said, every one of them right now I could stand flat-footed and name you every book in the Bible from Genesis to Moses. I said, Will, I'll come when I can. Thank you for the recipe. Another time, Will came in the bank there, and he said, you know what? Said, Miss Ella told me to go and buy some minnows. I went and bought 3 dozen minnows. She told me to take them up to Sackle, to Lucas Lake, and tie them under that reef. No, call it what do they call it?
Pier.
Pier. Thank you, darling. The pier, and then when Red King gets through at the bank this evening, he can go fishing. Now, Miss Ella wanted me to go fishing. Now, I mean, she really did. She loved to fish all the time, and she wanted me to go fishing. So he was down there giving me the instructions. And he said, and here's what you do. Says, this evening at 3 o'clock, said, when you close this here bank, you go out the back door, and you get in your pickup and says, you start it. Telling me every detail. You start it. And it says, you go on right on out up there to Sackle, and it says, all you got to do is cut off your engine and get in that boat. And it says, under that pier, I done got 3 dozen minnows tied there for you. Miss Ella wants, now you be sure and go, because Miss Ella wants you to go. The next day he came by to see what I what kind of luck I had, and he said, I didn't have too good luck. He said, let me tell you, I done found a secret place. He said, I know a place where you can catch some big old white perches. He says, as Fussell calls them, barndoa, they're big. And he said, it's a secret place. He said, I'm going to tell you about it, don't you tell nobody else. I said, okay. He said, this evening when you get through here at the bank, says you just get out there in the back and crank your pickup and says you go right on. You hit that road to Sycamore, says you just keep going. Said when you get to the river bridge, boom, hit it and go right on. He said, cross over the bridge. It said, Mr. Ed says, don't you turn now direction till you come to the first right hand. I said, yeah. He said, nah, sir. He said, there's a gap there in that fence. Said, you open that gap and said, you look out there and you see a house. It says, the people's live over there. And he said, you going? I said, well, how do you get, where's the hole? Where's the secret hole? He said, stop there and ask them niggas. They'll tell you. This is that secret fishing hole. Stop there. Them niggas will tell you. But don't turn that direction till you come first right hand. See, the left hand, there was a left hand turn, but that went to James Dawson's farm. Across the railroad track. So don't turn in that direction till you come to the first right hand. That's Will Hodge. Yeah.
I've forgotten all about it.
I think you should tell us about Bridge City. That's what I always enjoyed, the Bridge City, because of your Cajun. All those
Well,
stories.
that don't have anything to do with the
No,
Black
I know it
Stone.
doesn't have anything to do with the Blackstones, but it was always, I enjoyed the Cajun stories, but that all those people in Bridge City that you
Yeah.
talked about, and it's
It'd
amazing.
be, well, they will understand all of that. Jean and,
You know,
she teaches some of those children.
the Thibodeaux and all the other,
Yes.
yeah, no, I think Bridge City is much more that way than Fort Natchez is, but
Well,
it's,
that's true.
you know, the
Fort
further,
Arthur, though, is,
you know, the further
used to be.
east you get, the more you get of that.
Well, there were a lot of those. There were a lot of those coonies that had come over there from Louisiana,
the old country.
had gotten employment. They built homes, and some of them were pretty nice, and some of them were just shacks. Well, one man who was a little more than one of those, he had a construction company. His name was Ellerby. He was not a Frenchman, but he had lived around them so long, and he had worked so many of them that he had just taken up their accent and their terminology, because that seemed to be easier way to get along. And he developed a real good Cooney accent. And we were in church together. He was a deacon also, and that's where I was ordained as a deacon, is in Bridge City in the First Baptist Church. And unless he was introducing me to some friend of his, I was nothing but Booger Red. He had 2 or 3 hands that were men that worked and were red-headed, and their nicknames was Booger Red and so forth. And that was a notorious name in those days, and he called me Booger. He'd come in and sit down at my desk. Hey, Booger, what you doing? I said, well, I'm trying to get these numbers ready. So, see, I got someone want to talk to you about him. And he's an Irishman, but he had developed all this attitude. I mean, all this
That's exactly what my
dialect and all of this accent. One day I went over to his house. He had a big, fine home, and about 9 acres. And his home was right in the middle of it. And at high tide, he had a bayou that ran up in there. And it was a pretty place. They had peacocks and ducks and all that sort of thing. And so he was having to mow. He had a Ford tractor that he got on to mow part of it because it was large. Then he had a smaller tractor that had a small engine on it, and that he would push to get up around the house and cut all the small in that area and around the wise flower beds and so forth. So one day I went over there to visit with him, hit the cattle guard, and he heard the noise, and he was a little hard of hearing. Heard the noise, and he turned and looked, and I got over there, and there he was sitting on a stick of wood, the fireplace wood, had the carburetor off of this lawnmower. He was looking at it, and he was looking. He said, He said, "Hey, Booker, what you doing?" I said, "Well, I just came over to visit with you and see how you would. I noticed your tractor there as I left the bank and drove home. Just thought I'd visit with you." "Yeah," he said, "I'm mowing." I said, "I can see that." I said, "What's the matter with your tractor?" "Oh," he said, got where it wouldn't run good, so I started taking this carburetor off and taking it apart. Said I dropped something down in the grass." I said, "Is that right?" "Yeah, and I can't find it." So I got down there and took my glasses and run them out the end of my nose and just started examining the grass, looking for this little old spring that he said he dropped out of the carburetor. Director, he looked at me, he said, "Hey, Booker, what you doing?" I said, "I'm looking for this, whatever it was you dropped in the grass." "Oh, yeah, well, so go ahead. We, in that same conversation, he said, "Booker, you know something? I mow this thing, I mow it." He said, "Mower." He said, "I mow this thing and mow it, try to keep it looking." He said, "You know what, Booker?" He said, "If my yard had a chain link fence around it, he said every damn dog would die of constipation." He said, "They just come in my yard, just hunt my yard." I said, "I'm sure that's true." In fact, I could talk as much like him that his daughter at the church, if she was in the hall, his daughter, I've had his daughter to turn the corner, I opened the door, said, "Daddy." I could talk as much like him as his daughter would think of him. Oh, he was a card. He was a card.
His wife was, is it?
Jack
what's the
Parker.
Jack Harper.
Ellerby, Lyndon Ellerby, we're talking about. This is the Cooney I'm talking about. And her brother was Jack Parker.
And Jack Parker is Keith.
That's correct. He had two boys.
Keith
And
and,
three.
Had two boys.
well, I think you may be right, three.
Three.
Might have had three
Because
boys.
Richard was
Yeah.
Jean's age, Keith
Yeah.
was my age, and it seems like there was an older one that
All
was
right.
maybe Helen's age
I
or
believe
something.
there were three, I'm not
Okay.
sure, but we had not met them, I don't think, before we went to Bridge City. But as soon as we came there, she knew that we were coming, and Jack had told her that we were coming about us. So they just took us in right away. They were 15 years older maybe,
Mhm.
but they thought that they had they had lived in Port Arthur and then had come out to Bridge City and built this home. I think due to taxes maybe, but it was a beautiful place, the whole thing, and she always had the most gorgeous plants. Knew exactly what kind of fertilizers to put on them and everything.
Well, where Lyndon, before they built out at Bridge City, we had the huge disaster in Texas City when Monsanto Chemical blew up and the boats, two boats loaded with phosphate and something else blew up, and hundreds of people lost their lives. And Lyndon Ellerby was one of the two contractors that landed contracts to rebuild. Lyndon Ellerby construction company was steel fabrication, and his main project was these all storage tanks that you'd see on these tank farms around refineries. That was his main thing. And
It's called Ellerby Brothers.
yeah, construction.
And it could be that some of the members are still running it. I don't know. They were in Port Arthur.
Anyway, following the Monsanto chemical explosion and the rebuilding of that, well, Lyndon was pretty well in the money then, because he'd already had a long-running contract with Humble when Exxon was Humble, and he built these tank farms on a cost plus 10% basis. So he was always guaranteed to make money. He did such a good job. He went into South America and built them, and Argentina. Well, what's the difference in South America and Argentina? But all over, wherever Exxon had something, he went in those foreign countries and built these places. They would even have. I remember pictures he had of one where the oil tank, when they filled it up, some company filled it up, it capsized. The ground gave way under it. It was in swampy land. They hired Lyndon, and Lyndon went in there and straightened it up and reinforced it and built some more. And from then on, he had it going down the hill, with the wind to his back, so to speak, with Humble. And he just went all over. And then he enlarged his company and the Monsanto chemical explosion, then he just had lots of money. And so he bought this acreage and built this fine, big home out there. It wasn't two-story, but it was a long, rambling thing. It had different wings, and they just had good times and that sort of thing. But he was transformed into a Cooney, and he could.
Later, they sold that to some doctor that came to Ridge City, and they went to Woodville. And, you know, let's see now, who was it that was connected with, the dinner speaker there in Nacogdoches? Bob Murphy.
Bob Murphy.
Bob Murphy's mother married a man that lived on this same, well, really it was just a little road where they built there in Woodville. And even off of this little road, then they were quite a distance. She had planted dogwood. It was just a beautiful place.
Well, they bought
built
10
the
acres.
same
They bought
kind
10.
of home that they had in Ridge City there in Woodville. And they only had one child, an adopted Harriet. She was in Helen's wedding. She's a little bit younger than Helen, but they were real close friends. Still are. She lives in Houston now, and they talk.
Let me get back to something that happened at the Blackstone house one time. We went over, Dixie and I went over to visit with the Blackstones, and Rennie was about. They just moved into their new house, built over by the school. Rennie was, I can't remember what his age was, might have been 4 at this time. What we had to do was sing and take up collection. Rennie wanted to be a Baptist. He was going to be a Baptist preacher or a Baptist singer. And we would sing, and Rennie would take up collection.
I remember that.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I
You
remember
bet.
That was his idea.
Well, that's right. That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
One thing he couldn't master, though, was casting with my rod and reel. He could not master that. At that age, he tried it. He couldn't master it. Well, I can't think of anything else. A lot of good reminiscing. I got a tape here I want you to hear.
Okay. Talked about, I mean, that's an important thing for everybody to hear again.
Well, I know that Ralph came when we went to St. Augustine and Red got into the car crushing business and was up in Arkansas, I think, crushing yard is the way they referred to it. Just went to these used car lots and bought the whole lot, and then put the machine on there and crushed them, and then put them on the trucks. You've seen those, and take to the iron works, mostly over in Shreveport. I don't know those that they did in Arkansas. Anyway, Ralph went and stayed 3 or 4 days, maybe a week with Red while they were in Arkansas.
Go ahead.
Well, what was it though that he did when you were traveling back and forth from the motel?
Read every name on every mailbox. Read every name on every mailbox we passed. Read them aloud. We went back the next morning. You know, we were staying over where I had the trailer, the mobile trailer, out at this mobile trailer park. Next morning, we got in it, car, pick up, started, passed the same mailbox. He read the same name.
And there was a boy working for Red from St. Augustine. That we don't know what his problem was, but he had problems. So the dad told Red that if he would hire him, he says, I will even pay his salary. So Red said, why no? He was a big boy and could do whatever any of them could, I guess. So,
Well, we were staying in the motel that time.
yes.
Ralph and I were.
But he thought Ralph had come. Well, he was afraid to go to the restaurant and eat, afraid that it was poison or something. I mean, he was just really. But he worked.
He was at ease with me. He was at ease with me. Ralph came and he developed the attitude and took the idea. This man has come to do something with
to get me
to
some
get me,
way.
or to whatever and so forth,
And
He left.
He was really afraid of him.
And I had to call his
So-
daddy and mother and tell him I do not know where your son is. He has left. And he said, well, have you checked the bus station? I said, I have not checked the bus station, but how would I describe somebody other than just tall, brunette, and good looking? And, and if I had any idea of where he might have bought a ticket to, I said, I didn't even know he had any money. Fussel. And anyway, he wound up at home a couple of days later, and the daddy called me and said, don't worry about it, he's here. But he said, who is that man that's come in there with you? And I said, well, that's my closest friend. I said, that's Ralph Blackstone from Nacogdoches, retired mail carrier and so forth. I said, we've been knowing each other since the early 50s. And he says, well, he thinks he's FBI or somebody like that that's come in there to,
Yeah.
I said, that's not so. That is not
Don't
so.
you think that's why Ralph read the names on the mailboxes? Because that was something he had
all
always
that every
done.
year, yeah, every day of his life. That was bad.
And that was a habit with him, I know, while he was on the mail route.
I'm
or
sure it was because he
wherever
was by himself. That 70 miles by yourself. He always listened to the radio, and he took all of our arrangements off the radio.
Uh-huh.
Something's happening. I don't think it. Free ride.
Holy Spirit is leading my way. He's teaching, I'm learning to lean. Sometimes we can be like the man who said, my life is full now. I have everything, but there is a strong rock in Jesus, my Lord. Through my trials, I've been learning to lean. I'm learning to lean, learning to lean, learning to lean on Jesus. I'm finding more power than I
See, the man on the PA system in the churches.
I'm
Inexperienced.
learning to lean on Jesus. Sad and broken-hearted, so often I've knelt and I found God's peace so serene. And all that he asks is a childlike faith and a heart that's willing to lean. There's glorious victory each day now for me. I found his peace so serene. He helps me with each task, if only I ask. Every day now I'm learning to lean. I'm learning to lean on Jesus, and I'm finding more power than I ever dreamed. I'm learning to lean on Jesus.
Of all the songs I sing, now this one is really one I want you to hear.
Oh, really?
One I really like. That's all right. That's all right. There's 4 requests I get over and over.
It took
And they
a
want you to do
miracle
all 4 verses.
to put the
Like I
stars in space. It took a miracle
Like I said,
to
60% of our
hang
congregation, as old as I am,
in
are older.
place.
And they don't
But
want you to
when
leave out
he
a word.
saved my soul, cleansed and made me whole, it took a miracle of love and grace. My Father is omnipotent, on that you can rely. A God of might and miracles is written on the sky. He found me when I'd gone astray.
This is my verse.
He took me by the hand. He leads me everywhere I go. He helps me make my stand. It took a miracle to put the stars in space. It took a miracle to hang the world in place. But when he saved my soul, cleansed and made me whole, it took a miracle of love and grace. Though here his glory has been shown, we still can't fully see.
No, this has nothing to do. I
Doesn't
don't want
make
you to
any difference.
record
All right.
cold December or Saturday, or January Sunday. Somebody would go over and light this big heater just inside the auditorium. You mounted these tall steps in the front through a little vestibule and into the auditorium. The electricity went off. Dark came and then no lights, and a few people had begun to assemble. Of course, a lot of people, men, were out helping to ride the line to see which of the fuse switches were thrown. And Roddy Pace then they'd tell him about it, and he'd go to that pole, but everybody was looking except me and 4 or 5 others. We were assembled at the church. The lights finally came on, and there were 5 or 6 of us there, and then people began to come, and in a little while, here comes Josh Ham and his wife and their 2 daughters. One of them was Jocelyn. She was about 4 years old. It was cold. She walked, and the preacher, Brother Smith, was there. I was there. 4 or 5 others were standing around. She pushed one to the side and got up there and put her hands on this so she's, whoo, that damn thing's hot. And
She said,
Smitty,
just feel it, you know.
yeah. Go ahead.
Well, she just said, just feel it, Smitty.
And Brother Smith, of course, Josh, we're talking about Brother Smith, it'd be Smitty.
Yeah, call
And
it
John Self and Josh were just hand in hand buddies, so to speak, and they referred to the preacher as Smitty. And there was Jocelyn, oh, let the cat out of the bag. Whew, that damn thing's hot. She jumped back.
And that would have been Jocelyn,
Of course,
too.
Josh didn't know what to say. Just Jesus finding Zacchaeus and getting him to come down out of the tree and took him home to save him. So forth. That was the Sunday school text. So they'd started the Sunday school. pulled up to the main street and looked to the right and left. And when they looked to the left, there was Harry Fenton, the little short fellow that had a restaurant down there. You know, behind his counter, he had he had 2 soda water boxes stacked up so that he could get up there and be tall enough to put the chili and whatever else out on the counter. He was just a short man. They looked down the street and there was Harry Fenton. And Josh thought of this. He said, "Jocelyn, just reckon how tall,
Harry.
just reckon how tall Zacchaeus was. He had to get up in that sycamore tree to see over the crowd." She said, "Oh, about like Harry Fenton." This was when she was about 4.5 years old. 4.5. About like Harry Fenton.
She didn't mince very many words, if
No.
I remember correctly. I think she wanted to be a boy as much as she wanted to be a girl.
Yeah, well,
Well, now, when we were
Got
in
to
Red
rodeo,
City, Betty Ham, Josh's sister, and her husband Harold
Tiller.
lived in Orange. You know, Bridge City was between, almost halfway between Port Arthur and Orange. And we visited them quite often. When we went to Bridge City, then they came out there to the bank. They used the Bridge City Bank. And is it 2 sons that they have? No, they have a daughter.
Have a son and daughter.
Anyway, I think they have come back to Cushing. I guess that they still, well, maybe it's just a weekend place, I don't know. But they still own that farm, I'm sure, that Mr. Ham owned, that was out there, well, this side.
John
John
Fussell.
Yeah, on the way to Bug Scuffle, or
Yeah.
whatever they call
John
it up
Fussell.
there.
Buddy stuff.
Mhm.
Well,
I'd like to see the Tillers.